Hi guys, and welcome to today's lesson on impulse. Okay, so let's just start with Newton 2. And you might be wondering why I'm going into Newton 2 when we're dealing with impulse, but that will become evident now. So according to Newton's second law, a resultant force applied or a net force applied to an object will cause the object to accelerate. This we know from Newton's second law. So when the net force on an object changes, that causes the velocity that means that the velocity changes as well. And since the momentum is directly linked to the velocity, that means that the momentum also changes. So the resultant force acting on an object is equal to the rate of change of the momentum of the object in the direction of the net force. So if I look at Newton's second law, just quickly going to show you how this relates. So this is Newton's second law. So remember that the acceleration is the change in velocity over the change in time. And I can expand this further by looking at the change in velocity, which is also the final velocity minus the initial velocity over time. And then this part, the top part of the equation, starts to look very familiar. I've seen this in the previous video, where the mass times the change in velocity is also equal to the change in momentum. So that is why impulse of momentum in terms of Newton's second law says that when a net force acts on an object, that net force is equal to the rate of change in the momentum. Okay, so this brings us to a new formula that we can use in this chapter on impulse and momentum. So now we're going to look at impulse. Okay, so if I take this equation that I derived in the previous slide, I can change it further. I can rearrange it a bit further to make the change in momentum, delta P, the subject. And then I get this equation. And impulse is defined as the product, which means which implies multiplication, the product of the net force and the contact time. So then I will see from this equation that little part over there, where it's the multiplication, the product of the net force and the contact time, that is my impulse. That is what impulse is. But now what's interesting is we see that if this part of the equation is the same as the impulse, then it means that the impulse is equal to the change in momentum. So the change in momentum is directly dependent on the magnitude of the net force and the duration for which the force is applied. So remember, since this is a vector and that is also a vector, it means that your impulse is also a vector, which means that we have to remember our directions. Okay, so they can ask you questions using where you can answer them using this equation, but they can also ask you everyday questions on everyday examples of this impulse momentum theorem, and we're going to look at one or two of those. Okay, so I feel like we need to get into examples because sometimes this chapter can be so confusing and you have all this information but you still don't understand it, and I feel like the only way to really understand it is by going through a couple of examples. So we are going to look at 3 examples. One where it's just where you just have your calculations, one where they give you a graph, and another one I'll just discuss is everyday examples. Okay, so let me get my highlighter and let's jump into question or the first example. So it says a golf ball with a mass of 0.1, not the highlighter, of 0.1 kilogram is driven from T. The golf ball experiences a force of 1000 Newton while in contact with the golf club and moves away from the golf club at 30 meters per second. For how long was the golf club in contact with the ball? Okay, so whenever they ask you for a force or give you a force, you are going, in this chapter, you are going to use this equation over here. So all my values are in the correct units. Remember, force Newton, time seconds, change in momentum kilogram meters per second. The other thing I wanted to mention is, remember, since this is impulse, the units for impulse is Newton seconds. Okay, because it's Newton seconds. Okay, so and then you can input all the values that you do have. So since they don't give you the change in momentum and they give you a velocity, you are going to split this one up. Remember that the change in momentum is equal to mass times the change in velocity. Okay, so the force we have is 1000 Newton. They ask you for the time. So this is my unknown. And the mass is 0.1 kilograms. And the final velocity of the ball is 30 meters per second. So now you're thinking, okay, but they don't give me the initial velocity. But remember, the ball is standing still on the little peg thing. So it's in rest, which means the initial velocity is 0. And then you just, to get time alone, you go divide by 1000, and then you get the time, which would be, I'm going to write it in scientific notation, 3 times 10 to the power of minus 3 seconds. Okay, so another thing I just wanted to mention in terms of impulse is sometimes, especially when you have two objects that are moving, you have the ball and you have the club, or you have one car traveling this way and another car traveling that way, and they get into a collision. The kids don't know when to use which object's velocity and mass. But this is where Newton 3 is very, very important, because Newton's third law says that if object A applies a force on object B applies this force of the same magnitude, but in a different direction. So it doesn't really matter which object's information you use in the calculation, because the force that both of them will experience will be the same, but in different directions. So, for example, if I hit the ball with the club in this direction, the ball experiences a force in that direction, and the ball also applies a force on the golf club in that direction. And the impulse, since impulse is just the force times the contact time, and the contact time is the same for both objects, the impulse will also be the same, but in opposite directions. Okay, so let's move on to example number 2 over here, which is a graph, which is very common way for them to ask this question. So it says the following graph shows the force exerted on a hockey ball over time. The hockey ball is initially stationary. Very, very important. So I'm going to write V initial equals 0, so that I don't forget it. And it also has a mass of 150 grams. So I like to get into the habit of changing the units immediately to the correct unit. So I need my mass to be in kilograms, so I have to divide by 1,000, so it's 0.15 kilograms. Okay, and then they say calculate the magnitude, so we're not going to worry about direction, of the impulse or the change in momentum of the hockey ball. So again, impulse is this, or impulse is this. So you can use either of these depending on the information that they give you. So since they give you the force and they give you the time, it's safe to use this one. So remember, the moment you guys see a graph, you freak out and then you can't think clearly and you don't know what to do. But think of it this way: a graph isn't there to frighten you. The graph is there as a different way of giving you information. So your question should be is, how can I use this information on the graph? And how can I use the graph itself? Remember, there are two parts of a graph that we can use. We can, or not only two, but you can use the intercepts as well. But two main things that that ways in which we can use a graph is the area under the graph and the gradient of a graph. Both of these give you a lot of information depending on which graph you use, and we saw how important both of these are when we looked at projectile motion and those motion graphs, the velocity over time and the displacement time graph, how important this is. So the gradient is delta y over delta x. So it would be delta f over delta t, which is not something I use. But the area, remember the area of this is a triangle. So it's half times the base times the perpendicular height. And the base in this case is time, and the height is a force. And we actually have an equation that looks like that, where it's force times the time, which means that the area of this graph will be equal to the impulse. So you can say, you can put it like this: the area is equal to impulse, which is a half times the base times the height, and the base is 0.5 and the perpendicular height is 150, and then I get the impulse as 37.5 Newton seconds. And that is that. Okay, so the last example is one where they ask you about everyday scenarios. So I'm just going to manipulate this equation into this. I'm just going to make the force the subject over here. So I divide by delta t. So whenever I have everyday examples where they ask me questions like, why does a cricket player pull his hands back when he catches the ball? Or why, when I jump off of a tall building, do I bend my knees? And it's all about this equation. So let's say, for example, we have the one where why can airbags be useful during a collision? Set your answer by using the impulse momentum theorem. So we are looking at airbags. Okay, so what happens is there are a couple of things in my scenario that I have control over and others that I don't. So remember, the change in momentum is dependable on dependent on the mass and the beginning and the end velocity. If I get into an accident, I can't influence the mass of the car. I can influence this a bit, but remember it's an accident. So, and the accident, the question isn't, should I drive slower? It's, are airbags useful? So if I have exactly the same accident where the initial and the final velocities are the same, what difference will airbags make? So if there isn't a change, I can't change the momentum. I can't change this one. But what I can control is the contact time. So if I hit my head on the dashboard, bah, it's a solid object. So the contact time would be very, very, very small. Whereas when I have airbags, hold a balloon against your head and bump at you, it can actually go in a bit and then out. So what this does is it increases the contact time. And if this value over here, the larger this value is, the smaller this one is going to be. So which means that the force that is applied on my head will be a lot smaller. So when I have to answer this question for marks, I will say from the impulse momentum theorem, this one over here, or you can write this one down. An airbag prolongs the time of the impact during the accident, thereby causing a smaller force to be exerted on the passenger. And because the resultant force is experienced is inversely proportional to the contact time. So you have to write the fact that the net force is inversely proportional to that one over there. Okay, and exactly the same. If I jump off a tall building and I keep my knees rigid, the contact time is small. Whereas if I bend my knees, or when the cricket baller catches the ball and pulls it towards himself, the contact time is prolonged because we can't affect this. Okay, or we have other examples where a ball is dropped, and in one scenario it bounces back, and we have another scenario where a ball hits the floor and then it just stays there. So this might be a rubber ball, this might be a clay ball, whatever the scenario is, and then they have to specify that the contact time stays the same. So if the contact time stays the same, we are not looking at that, we are looking at the change in momentum. So what we changed is the speed, and the greater the change in the velocity is, the greater the change in momentum will also be, and the greater the force will be, because these two are directly proportional. So this is how you answer these everyday example questions. So you have to state the theorem, and you have to say what value changed. For example, the contact time or the change in velocity, what changed in your two different scenarios. And then you can say what the relationship is between the value that changed and the net force.